I would have done the wrong thing. All right. Well, hello, and I guess good afternoon for most of us. Thank you for joining the Next Generation Lodging webinar. I'm Chris Henry. I'll be moderating today. We have a great group of panelists who are going to be joining us from around the country, and I'm actually going to ask them to quickly introduce themselves and tell a little bit about the companies they work for, so you folks have a perspective on where they're coming from. I'm going to ask Emily if you'd be willing to start with that.
Certainly. Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Penfold-Daly. I'm the Director of Marketing at First Hospitality. Looks like we've got a good little FH cohort on this call. So hi, everybody. We just hopped off another call with that team. First Hospitality is a third party. Well, we're an owner, manager, operator, financer of hotels. We have currently a portfolio of 42 hotels all across the United States, with our sights on doubling that portfolio over the upcoming future. So we traverse all of the brands. We've got Marriott, Hilton, IHG, Hyatt, as well as some independent properties as well, and both select and full serve properties, as well as down city and suburban properties as well. So quite the good mix.
Great. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate you chiming in. Brad, would you mind going next?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Aloha, everyone. As you can tell, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. Aloha from the beautiful islands of Hawaii. My name is Brad Dole. Yeah, I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Mauna Resort. Mauna Resort, if you've ever been to Hawaii, it's located on the island of Hawaii, the largest island in the state. Mauna Resort encompasses a multitude of resort hotels, one of them being Mauna Beach Hotel, which is an autograph collection, and the Westin Hapuna Beach Resort, which is a Westin. A couple different golf courses, tennis academy, beautiful beaches, and just amazing landscapes. So I'm very excited to be on the call today and appreciate your invite.
Thanks, Brad. And Craig, how about yourself?
Hey guys, Craig Carbonier, Southern California. I work for a company called Milestone. We provide digital marketing software and services to the hospitality industry, as well as some partners slightly outside. I've spent the last 15 years working in hospitality, truly love our industry, and I guess really encouraged and excited about the transformation that's happening, not only in digital, but across the industry. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you all for joining us. Obviously, COVID is on the front of everybody's mind right now, but I don't want to start there. I want that to be the second part of our conversation. I want to talk a little bit about what your groups were doing in the run-up to COVID, any changes you had seen and experienced in the marketplace, and we'll sort of use that as sort of the endpoint before the world changed, and then continue the conversation from there. But Emily, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the portfolio was looking? I know you folks did some rebranding and repositioning on a couple of assets. Why don't you give us what the picture looked like prior to March of this year?
Yeah, so I actually started with First Hospitality on the 10th of February. And so by the 13th of March, all of our travel had been shut down. Part of the reason why we were looking to bring in new talent, myself included, is that the portfolio right now has, we were looking to work on more lifestyle, luxury, autograph, tribute, tapestry sorts of products. And we have several of those projects underway. So we were looking to change that mix. And when I say we are looking to double the portfolio, we had been looking to double the portfolio as well. So some of those goals had not changed. Having come into the program brand new, or come into the portfolio brand new, we were really just working on commanding RGI in our markets as well, and really just being rate leaders in the industry. So that was a big position of where we were. We were looking at investing really heavily in our properties with renovations. We had several hotels that had undergone rebrandings over the last couple of years, 2 Autograph Collection, 2 Joie de Vie with Hyatt, several other transitions like that. We had a lot of renovations that were underway and new hotel openings that were underway. And actually, we're very lucky that not tons of that has ground to a halt. So yeah, still a very forward-focused organization. before, and it's just changed a little bit now.
Great. No, I thank you. And I think everybody was sort of in that growth strategy mode of looking to how do we continue. And, Brad, I'm really curious. I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday on our prep call, to hear what's going on the Big Island. Obviously, Mauna Kea being historic has been, itself independent, then transitioned into Autograph. Obviously, Hapuna had itself, even though it was branded with Prince in the States, a sort of quasi-independent in its own way, and has now gone to Westin. I'd be really curious to know, prior to COVID, where had you seen the market going for your properties in that transition from independent to branded?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it really kind of boils down to a number of different factors. The state actually was on a tremendous upward swing of growth, not just the Big Island of Hawaii, but the entire state. 2019 was kind of a record year. We had record numbers of inbound traffic from international destinations, West Coast US, East Coast, you name it, coming from all over. And the Big Island specifically, because all of the new inbound travel airlines, Southwest started flying. We had Japan Airlines now doing direct lift to the island of Hawaii, so Kona. It was just, everything was working well. Everything was positioned well. Our resorts had the two resorts had the two best years in their history. And of course, a lot had to do with our repositioning of the brands. We made a conscious effort years ago to kind of look at brands that were out there and what brands would make sense for these two beautiful properties. And of course, Marriott had just wonderful brands with Autographed. And I know that Emily, of course, is working with a couple of her new interests. And then, Westin just made sense for Hapuna. But yeah, the growth with those brands definitely has been seen. Our ownership group is extremely pleased with what we're seeing from a growth factor. RevPOR overall at the resort, including all of the in-house F&B and activities and experiences, was definitely on the increase. And then, of course, the clock struck 12, and we all are in the position we're in today. So, yeah, it was one of those things that we never saw coming. And just so that everyone knows, Hawaii just reopened. We just reopened October 15th for trans-Pacific travel. You could come to Hawaii, but you would have to quarantine. But now you can arrive in the state of Hawaii as of October 15th with a negative test that you take 72 hours prior to arrival. So, now that that's happening, we're seeing increments of travel but coming back to the state.
No, thank you. And with the switch to Westin at Hapuna, have you seen prior to COVID, were you seeing most of the sales and marketing increases coming through the Marriott distribution channel platform or from other areas?
A tremendous amount of our inbound is coming direct. Marriott has such a tremendous distribution all over the world. Their channels can far reach anything that we would have been able to do as independent hotels previously. So thus why we made a conscious effort to work with Marriott for both brands. It also made sense in Mauna Kea, because we're a stay at one, play at all environment, to have two resorts where you can walk 10 minutes to each other and be able to use all the facilities at each. It was one of those conscious things that I think was correctly made. It was previous to when I got here, but let's just say I'm reaping the benefits.
No, excellent. And my family's been longtime Mauna Kea, I guess all the way back to the 60s. My grandparents were staying there, and it's always great to hear these stories of evolution and change being very positive. So I'm glad to hear everything going well over there.
Yeah.
Craig, tell me a little bit about what you folks were seeing and doing in the run-up to the crisis beginning.
Sure. So obviously digital marketing is something that you pay very close attention to in terms of trends. We were following very closely some of the digital marketing trends coming up, leading up to the pandemic, such as, Google's latest bird update, right, is a perfect example of that, right? Hotels were adapting to that trend But ever since, things started to change, not much has been modified in terms of the technology and the strategies that are available to hotels. What we're seeing, though, is sort of I guess, the double down of some of those considerations from a technology and strategy perspective. Another example, right? We saw mobile being a core trend in websites and user experience. Gosh, that's even more so the case now. So it was really about focusing on user experience. Interestingly enough, now in the pandemic, we're starting to see that become even more clear and even that much more of a priority.
No, thank you, and I appreciate that foresight. Technology and mobile, and it's revolutionizing the way things are done. And I think we're going to see a lot more tech being rolled out because of the crisis. So when we all started seeing the writing on the wall come late March, that the shutdown was going to happen, what steps did you guys take to prepare for some level of shutdown or closure? I'm going to give this one to Brad really quick, because I know his answer is going to be concise, because Hawaii didn't have many options.
Yeah, we didn't. Hawaii basically pretty much shut down the state as of March. So March 27th, I believe, was the date. Both our hotels decided to also shut down. All guests had to be transferred out, and everyone left the state until everything could kind of get under control. We thought initially that it would be 2 months, short-term thing that would happen, and 7 months later, we're still in the position where a number of hotels in Hawaii, I would say over 80% of the hotels are still closed, but looking to reopen sometime in the near future.
Did any of the key resorts on the Kohala Coast stay open, or did everybody close?
There was one hotel, part of the Marriott brand, Sheraton Kona, stayed open.
Okay.
We're in a transition phase, so their ownership group decided, and it was probably a great decision, because there were accommodations required for different type of military and FEMA groups, so it was perfect that they stayed open.
They stayed open. Great. And Emily, how about you folks? What steps did you guys take when the writing became apparent on the wall?
Well, after all of us had a good time to freak out, we got to work, which is what we all do really well. There's the old saying about you learn a lot of, you learn more about a person through the bad times than you do the good times. And this was a good indication of that. While we have a very optimistic group of professionals that we work with, we took a very, very aggressive, long vision approach. The organization has been around for 34 years, so we knew from 2008 that it wasn't going to be an immediate recovery. However, everything went down. So we took a really long view approach to what we should do. So by the day I left the office in Chicago to come back home to Florida, we had shut down all of our corporate travel just to make sure that we were keeping our team safe immediately, because that was the most important thing. And we immediately started taking a look at what do we do first to keep our people safe. So we started on a cleanliness first plan, marketing not just externally to our incoming guests where we still had them, but also very importantly, marketing to our internal guests, our associates, to make sure that they had a very clear idea of what they should be doing, so that when these situations came up, whether it be a positive case with a guest on property, or a positive case or with a staff member, or restrictions in the city or the county or the state, depending on what governing body was impacting that they knew what to do. So that was kind of the first step, was establishing safety and security. Our revenue team and our sales team immediately started doing daily forecasts for as far out as they possibly could, because everything was changing so drastically. We had, tens of thousands of dollars in business gone in one day. And while the brands were trying to figure out what they were going to do with attrition and cancellation fees, we had to make a determination to give our properties guidance across the portfolio. So those were the kind of two big things that we did to kind of tighten things in right away, was how do we make sure that our associates are safe, and how do we make sure that our business is going to be intact? So is that, closing down marketing spend in channels that we know are going to dry up. We did that. Our marketing team did that pretty immediately. Within like the first couple of weeks of the shutdown, we had pretty much closed down all of our marketing spend for channels that that even if they were performing, we knew just because it booked now doesn't mean it's going to stay later. So we closed a lot of that down. And in tandem with that, we also started thinking recovery, because we're like I mentioned earlier, it's a very, very forward focused organization. So we wanted to think, what does this look like as we start to recover? We can't wait for brand guidance on this. What are initiatives we can do? So we started looking at marketing initiatives such as first responder rates, college rates, long-term stay rates, play rates, where you have potentially homeschool parents coming in and working from the hotel and things like that, whatever we could do. And then we were to market with cleanliness first before a lot of the brands were with their safety protocols. So we were able to position our properties in their local markets with some of that. So that's sort of the approach we took, was like closing it down really quickly and also thinking long-term growth. What do we do? We redid our basically every system we have in the portfolio changed as well. We also implemented an Emerge Stronger plan, which revisited how we forecast, it revisited how we budget, it revisited how we sell, it revisited our human resources and people services programs. Basically every facet of our organization got looked at with a laser focus to say, how do we make this more efficient and easier for our teams and something that's sustainable in the long term?
So let me ask you just a quick follow-up question. I know you can't probably say which channels you closed without saying people's names, but can you tell us which channels you kept open? I'd be curious to know that.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about the strategy there. So the key strategy with that, and you can use deductive reasoning to find out what we might be talking about. But the primary strategy that we took was, we knew that things short term, like within 24 hours, were booking. So we knew that things within like 24 to 48 hours, there was a pretty good we could reasonably say that those probably wouldn't cancel and we'd be good. So we kept those short-term channels open. And we also knew that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And as we were figuring out cancellation and attrition, we can comfortably start booking stuff in the long term, that even if it has to move, at least we have that in the contract and we can move it if we need to. Obviously, things like group evaporated, BT evaporated. So we knew it was going to be transient and long booking, like a year out. Anything social, we figured we could probably do. So again, using your deductive reasoning, you can guess what we might have kept open.
No, I appreciate that. So now let's talk about the transition. And this is what I think everybody's really come to hear about today is, at some point in the future, none of us have a crystal ball, but at some point we're going to turn the corner on this. Obviously, Hawaii's reopening. Other cities in various states are trying to get their economies going again. Travel into drive-to destinations has been up throughout the summer and fall. What are the steps, Craig, that you guys are recommending from a branding and marketing perspective to your clients that they should start taking now to be ready for the future post-COVID?
Sure, that's a great question. I think it's a good segue with what Emily mentioned as well, right? A lot of the messaging in the recovery and growth phase, right? It's been geared towards how do we, communicate, how can we share in empathy or cleanliness and building confidence. I think for a lot of now, our customers, it's about competing, right? With a lower amount of demand, it's important and critical that a lot of that content and a lot of the marketing that these teams are doing grows in terms of visibility, and it can be picked up in search, and it can be part of an overall kind of conversion strategy. So really looking with, and working with our clients on strengthening their foundation, making sure that they're leveraging perfect execution in digital marketing and websites and search marketing, so that they're able to shift demand to their specific property. So again, just understanding what is being shared and what's being communicated by the property, but then amplifying that through digital marketing.
Thank you. No, and I think that's really key and important because, again, as we said earlier, digital is the way forward. And Brad, what are you folks doing in Hawaii right now for your resorts on sort of that revenue management strategy as you guys get ready to reopen? What's the game plan?
The game plan, there's been a lot of talk about different promotions, but a lot of the promotions out there that had been talked about were a lot of drive destination promotions. And of course, Hawaii, we're air traffic only. Yeah, this island does have a couple large cities, and we can have a tiny bit of staycation growth, but not enough to sustain. So our kind of strategies were to focus on who we could infuse from a short-term time period here. Kama'aina, which is a local resident, that's just a nickname or a Hawaiian name for a local resident. That was kind of a key focus for us because we know that there is a pent-up demand for the inter-island traffic here in Hawaii. Now, we know that basically there are a number of different people coming from the US. And what we also did is kind of looked at, what kind of promotions and strategies make sense. And one of them that we've actually put in play, and we just actually started a restart of our campaign in October, was the long-term stay. Emily, you kind of mentioned it, but the long-term stay, what we're finding, and it's been extremely successful, is that the guest of the past is not the guest of today and the guest of the future. So we basically really see that there's going to be a transition of people from a place to work and a place to take their kids to school. I'm sure a number of people on the call today are going to know that their kids are not taking school at school. They're probably taking school remote. And people who used to work in an office are working remote and have the ability to work remote. So long-term stay and long-term stay offers have been extremely successful. Now, I do see that sustaining all the way through 2021 and into the future, 22 and beyond. I do see that there'll still be some sort of predisposition to actually do that type of travel to Hawaii and have that as a key focus of working remote. But I do think once we kind of get through the next stages of the pandemic, we'll have to kind of do a reevaluation of what does work. Of course, there's many different other strategies that Marriott has in place that we have to, we work with, and a lot of different ocean promotions, just to kind of invigorate people to travel again. One thing that really has not been talked about, there's been a number of surveys that have been out that talk about customer sentiment. And customer sentiment has really shifted from initially when COVID came out. There was still not a lot of information out there. And the sentiment was, yeah, I'll travel. It's no big deal. I'll get on an airplane. Well, customer sentiment has kind of changed. And the confidence level of the traveler has changed. So since March to today, customer sentiment is, I want safety first. And before I hop on a plane, which to come to Hawaii you have to do, I want to make sure that I'm safe and that my passengers that I'm with are safe and the passengers that are around me are safe, even before they get here. So that's going to be a focus. And I know that the state of Hawaii is working diligently with a number of different airline partners and also COVID testing partners to ensure that we can instill the confidence level to the traveler coming to Hawaii, that they can be on a plane, they can actually get tested pre-arrival, which is one of the conditions to come to the state if you don't want to quarantine. But it's something that we all have to look forward to for the entire 2021, because I do not see that changing anytime soon, especially for this state.
Are there any programs that the state of Hawaii is doing to promote tourism itself, or is it leaving it all up to the independent or individual resorts to do their own promotion? I just didn't know if the state's got a campaign going.
No, the state has obviously jumped all over this HTA and the marketing team over at HT have really done a phenomenal job of kind of trying to be forefront in this. Of course, a tremendous amount of our travel to the state came from Japan and, of course, the West Coast US. So those key markets have been kind of targeted for the relaunch of the state in Hawaii. And it's great to hear that Japan now is a part of our pre-travel testing program, so they can start arriving to Hawaii. But the amount done by the state is still not enough, and hotels and hotel brands really had to make full efforts to supplement what was not done and what they couldn't do from a distribution standpoint.
Yeah, no, that's going to be the challenge is getting the states involved. One of the things I think is really going to be interesting, and actually before I get to that point, Craig, I don't know for maybe quickly, if you want to touch on what are some of the other trends, since Brad brought up trends that he's seeing in customer sentiment, what are some of the other trends you guys are seeing right now that hotels should be aware of?
Sure. Cleanliness and safety is probably a trend that we're all seeing. That's now come through in marketing. It's come through in website content. It's come through in ad copy. That will continue to be the theme in the short term. But Bradley touched on it, and I know Emily and I are seeing it here on the mainland. There's a lot of local travel, and people are coming by car, and they're so the radius, right, and the type of guest is the targeting slightly different. So it's important to be mindful of what's important to your guests from a messaging perspective, cleanliness and safety, and then who is the makeup of that guest who's staying in our hotels today. And then obviously creating campaigns around that, they're a lot more impactful.
And demographics of guests are changing because right now everybody needs that escape, and they're all looking for whatever opportunity they can get. Sort of my next curiosity and question is really for both Emily and Bradley. Both you folks have, Bradley being on the luxury resort end and upper upscale resort end, Emily, you being in the full service, limited service, more metro area side of the industry. Obviously, food and beverage took a big hit in general, and with the safety and concern that we're all wanting to see, things like a breakfast buffet, which I know traditionally has been sort of a big marketing point for luxury resorts and for limited service hotels. Both that's all coming under fire right now for cleanliness and stuff. What are you guys doing to sort of transition food and beverage to this post-COVID world? How are you guys lining that up right now?
I'm happy to take that first. So a lot. It goes back to what we talked about with strategy as well, right? That it's key for our customers coming in. And that was one of the things that we addressed in the Cleanliness First plan was how do we do that safely for our associates and how do we do that safely for our guests? I think in select serve properties and even full serve properties that would have had breakfast spaces, if you have markets, those are great things to leverage. It's not just it's a buffet or nobody eats, where on that's a big spectrum between starvation and gluttony, right? So pick something else on that spectrum. Can you do a drop at the door? Can you do prepackaged muffins? Is there some other way that you can feed that need literally for our guests? And then for the larger food and beverage outlets, we know that in any of our northern markets, that window is running out. I mean, our properties in Chicago and had snow this weekend. Anybody in Denver had snow, in Colorado had snow this weekend. So your window for outside is rapidly closing. So we're being really creative in those spaces as well. We actually have some food and beverage outlets in our portfolio that are almost exclusively rooftop outlets. So we've had to be creative with things like that. So we have igloos at several of our properties that we use that are independent heated igloos that seat about 8 people. There's an upcharge for the rental of it. They can have a full food and beverage experience inside. They're completely cloistered away from everybody else. It actually becomes a really cool, unique experience and a marketing opportunity because they want to take pictures while they're in the igloo and we get to use it, and it's socially distant, fun and COVID free. What? That's so great. So we've been able to leverage a lot of that as kind of a key component of what we're doing. But it brings up a really interesting point as well. I was just having a discussion about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I think I touched on it maybe yesterday during our call, but I was having this grand discussion about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which of course you need to eat first and you need to be safe and all of this other stuff. But now more than ever, that's an interconnected piece, right? So you can't enjoy a luxury good, insert hotel name here, if you don't also feel safe. So those things are more interconnected than ever. And then from the perspective of those businesses, not only what are the needs of our customers, but how can we market ourselves to suit needs that we wouldn't have otherwise been? So how can we take a luxury hotel or a select serve hotel and show it as filling the need for food or the need for safety? If you can't be in your office, can this be safer? If you can't be out having a large wedding, is, you know, a beautiful small ceremony in one of these outdoor igloos the coolest thing you've ever seen since Coachella, and also like safe, right? So can you fit your product into one of those other areas of the pyramid that you wouldn't have otherwise considered before?
I'd never taken Coachella into that consideration before. So thank you for that.
That seems like a Coachella thing, a wedding in an igloo. Absolutely.
It does, actually. How about you folks, Brad? I mean, between the luau, the clam bake, and the big breakfast buffet, are you guys changing things up, or are you doing different things? How are you going to market that? Because that used to be a big marketing element there.
Yeah, like everything, we just have to flex with the times. You know, anyone coming to the state and has to be wearing a mask. And of course, if you're at Mauna Kea, you have to wear your Mauna Kea approved mask. So, you know, we're, like Emily had touched on, safety and security is paramount. We've had to adjust kind of our restaurants. The nice thing about restaurants and our luau's and our clam bakes, those two are open air, but our restaurants, we have 9 of them, they're all open air. So we have that luxury of not having to create an igloo, which I think is a brilliant idea. Fantastic, great job to you guys. But having the ability to have the open air environments has been kind of a nice thing to kind of work with. Now, in regards to the way that we serve buffets, of course, you know, you'd wake up and you'd go down to the restaurant, you get served a la carte or buffet. Well, we're needing to flex kind of with it. And, you know, we're calling it hybrid buffets, where you're still going to be able to have a made-to-order buffet breakfast, whatever you choose on our line, but we're going to serve it for you. So our team is going to put it together and bring it to you. So because we are luxury and premium luxury resorts, we're able to, with the staffing levels that we have, kind of promote this and use kind of the restaurants in a little bit different fashion than we have in past. I think it's going to add a little bit more of a personal customer touch because you're going to have more interaction with your wait staff than you would before, because all they'd be doing is clearing your plates. Well, now there's a bit of interaction between you and the waiter, because you're, you know, asking them their advice of what basically they suggest, what they would, what's their favorite item that they would choose. And I think there's going to be a lot more participation from that. But in regards to before anything reopens, because we have yet to reopen any of our major restaurants, which only 2 of them are buffet, but outside of the restaurants, once we do reopen, because seating is going to be limited, you have 50% of the seating that is available. I really think people will feel safe and secure. Cleanliness, the amount of cleaning that we're doing, the amount of protocols that are in place. We're going through an intense training with all of our staff. I do believe people, once they do arrive, will feel safe and secure, knowing that we're doing everything possible to keep them safe and secure.
No, perfect. No, I appreciate that. And I hopefully can get a chance to experience those new ways.
I hope you're coming out soon. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the, Craig, is there anything that you guys have been seeing on your end with the digital marketing and consulting on that side that relates to food and beverage and how hotels are trying to reposition what they offer?
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know if it's something that I could base broadly across the audience. What I will touch on, and I think Bradley touched on it earlier, is just the overall sentiment. right? So digital marketing, whether it be reviews or surveys, right? Just paying very close attention to the feedback that you're getting so that you can continue to adapt. That's both operationally as well as from a digital marketing perspective, just picking up on those cues a lot more quickly than maybe we've done in the past. I think that's the only feedback I can give.
No, I appreciate it. We have a question from the audience that's a little bit off topic from what we had sort of discussed yesterday, but I'm just going to throw it out there if anybody has any thoughts on it. The question is, what are your thoughts on the growth of new construction when the shutdown restrictions diminish?
I'm happy to take a stab at that because we've got a bunch of new construction projects that are going on right now. I mean, it's not in the sales and marketing realm necessarily, but it is directly going to impact our property. So I'll take it from the development side and then move on to the sales and marketing side. If you are developing a hotel, obviously financing for new projects is completely dried up. So if you don't have a really, for organizations that don't have a really good bedrock foundation of highly performing new builds, it's really hard to secure funding. And that's really challenging for a lot of companies that are looking to develop hotels. It's really great for organizations that have strong foundations, who haven't ever defaulted on a loan, who have a track record of opening and ramping up hotels really quickly. The likelihood of getting funding for those is a lot better. So I think what this is going to do for the hotel landscape overall is likely shake out, as it did in 2008, to be very fair, is shake out a lot of the would-be's, right? It's a little bit of business Darwinism going on right now. On the hotel side, if you're sitting in a hotel and there's new builds coming up in your city, don't count your chickens before they're hatched, essentially is the role right now, because you have hotels that have been institutions in cities that are completely shuttering their doors, and nobody, unless they can come out of pocket with cash, can resecure those properties. So the entire landscape of our cities is changing, where you might have had an oversaturation of rooms in the market before, that might constrict significantly. So if you're sitting in a hotel, that is an operation and you have potential new hotels that are coming up, it can become an advantage to you if those don't open. What I would say is that there's also a lot of opportunity for existing properties to, in the downtime, make sure that what would be a benefit for them, which is a brand new shiny product that nobody has ever slept in before, reposition your property to adapt to that. That if you have, if there's renovations or adaptations that you've made on your property, you need to make sure you've got really high quality photos and things like that are showing your hotel really well, because people are going to say, nobody's ever slept on that bed and I want to go there, as opposed to this 102-year-old hotel, even if the mattress is brand new, right? Like, leverage the value differentiators that you have and the ways that you've been able to improve your hotel and keep it up to date as well. I hope that answers your question. I know I took it from a couple different perspectives.
I think that helps answer their question. I mean, we all predominantly do development work at my company, and we've seen certainly a lot of waves. But I think the biggest kicker is going to be, as you said, is financing, and both debt and equity financing are really hard to come by right now. We've already seen in downtown LA. There were in the greater downtown area, there's like 54 hotels announced prior to COVID that were going to be under construction. And from what I've heard, that's already down to about 40. And I expect that to even be shrink further. So new construction, I think it's still going to be a couple of years, especially as you mentioned, cities like New York, who are already seeing RevPAR declines prior to COVID. They needed to have a bit of a culling of rooms to make the numbers really work. What are some creative ways of capturing leads for 2021? What kind of measures are you guys implementing on that front? I don't know, Riley, if you want to take a run at that first.
Capturing leads. Well, I think the net, which used to be small and more targeted, is definitely more widespread. I think Emily maybe touched on it. Things that maybe you hadn't thought of in the past, that maybe were kind of like in a distant kind of memory and distant thought of what maybe you would have done to capture new business and new eyeballs on your resorts. are definitely things that we need to kind of reinvigorate. I know that I've challenged my team to look at, we called it Plan C, because everyone has a Plan A and a Plan B. And we had the Plan C, which is above and beyond, looking at it. It had nothing to do with COVID, but just Plan C, to look at what out there have we done or we need to do, or what ability do we have to transition someone who may be looking to travel to the Caribbean, to Mexico, to Europe, and have them make their choice and come to Hawaii. So my team is challenged with that every day, and each of them have come up with different strategies and tactics to uncover that new customer. You talk about Mauna Kea Beach Hotel. It was built in '65, and we have guests that have stayed here since 1965, and they and their families come year after year. Well, you know, we have a customer that has a long time legacy, but how do we attract new customers? And it's all about kind of uncovering and pulling up that stone, seeing what's underneath, and that what makes sense in the future. So I don't think there's any magic wand or secret sauce to what we're doing to uncover new leads, but I think it's really kind of opening up your net a lot wider and kind of looking at all different avenues. Market segments that may have been kind of pushed away in past are definitely something that we're looking at again.
Are you putting any effort right now to trying to find group business, or you put that sort of on the back burner until things really settle down?
Group business, actually, we've been lucky. The majority of the group that actually ended their conferences due to COVID or had moved their conferences stayed with the hotels. So we were lucky. I think roughly 90% of the groups just shifted space. We definitely are not putting group aside, although we are seeing group make a slower decision effort to come to Hawaii. So as much as groups have been a key kind of market segment in past, groups are just taking a longer time to make their decisions. I think Craig or Emily talked about short-term business, and short-term business is coming from different sources from the leisure side. But group is going to be a key focus for Hawaii for the recovery in 21, 22 and beyond. Now, do we see it coming in the near future of 21? We do see some groups, some smaller group, but we don't see the large incentives and maybe corporate accounts that would have traveled coming back up till a little later in 21 and going into 22 and beyond.
No, thank you on that. Emily, how about you folks? What do you guys do? Creative ways are you guys excuse me, getting tongue tied here. What creative ways are you guys trying to capture leads for 2021?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things to look at there. So from a sales perspective, I know somebody will go tell John Brosnan that I'm quoting him right now, but we have a new motto in our sales department, which is quote to close. And it seems really obvious, but we need to be hyper competitive when we're going to our clients to close a piece of business. And what is winning now and what will continue to win for us in the future is getting that occupancy. And in a competitive market like this, when you're going up against just about every other hotel in your market, whether they're in your comp set or not, you need to have a really good looking rate to be able to command that. Because while we know that occupancy will come back with the way that the economy is and the long road that it will be to recovery, it is just a fact of the matter that the rate growth is going to take time. So if we can get with that reality and get that out of our way as a barrier, we're good. As far as 2021 business is concerned, very specifically, one of the only segments we're seeing an increase in leads for is weddings. Like, love is all you need. It just is. Love is all you need. So we have seen between a 7% increase and a 126% increase in leads just off of Wedding Pro for our hotels that are a part of that program. In this year over year from 2019 to 2020. So if social will come back, most of the weddings, I think in the last August update was the last I saw, 26% of weddings had rebooked for later in 2020, 59% of weddings had rebooked for 2021. So 2021 and likely 2022 are panning out to be some of the biggest years for weddings we have ever seen in the industry at all. So If you have a space that you can put people in and they can kiss each other and be, exposed to marital bliss and start their family together, like just do it if you can, because that'll be key for us. I also really want to focus in on something that Bradley said, which is he has clients that have been staying with his hotel since the 60s. The really strange thing about COVID is it has been a great equalizer. Hotels that had previously been completely unavailable for a whole new generation of travelers have suddenly had doors wide open for them and red carpets rolled out. There is nothing more valuable to our hotels than loyal customers, and they are hard to come by. So if you can capture that transient business right now, especially in your local drive market, and you can provide a unique or a memorable experience for them, in spite of everything that's going on, you bet your bottom dollar they will consider coming back to you when business gets back to normal. So I think building your base of loyal customers is key. 2021 is great. And then beyond 2021 is all love. And then beyond that, making sure you're quoting to close for long-term business.
So on that, you guys have both mentioned long-term stays. You mentioned, being competitive on rate. How are you leveraging sort of revenue management to say, here are the rates? Because obviously the details coming in from STR and others, it's all over the board because the models are sort of broken right now. How are you guys handling that revenue management strategy to come up with a rate that, hey, this is enough to be competitive, but not to hurt us financially in the long run? What are you guys doing there?
I'll go first on that. Well, I think right now, we have to do our own intelligence. As much as STAR reports have not been existing, there's been no existence of a STAR report in 7 months here in Hawaii. We have to do our own intelligence. And you're right, what is the right rate strategy? It's really ourselves on a weekly basis going through, and our director of revenue on a daily basis, ensuring that the rates for the short term and the near future. Now, for 2020, we've got 2 months left before the end of the year. There's going to be a lot of different rate strategies, short term special offers that are going to be out there. We understand that, but we're looking beyond that for 21 and 22, kind of where our competition. We have a couple of different hotels and resorts that just came out of renovation. They're going to be a new shiny toy, kind of where their rate positioning is compared to where we need to be. But we also want to ensure that that the customer sees value in it. We are not going to be increasing rate growth to where a customer who comes and says, I really did not see the value in what you're charging. We want to make sure that that customer value for what we do actually charge is there. Now, having 2 full service hotels does make it a little bit easier, but I know that some of our more limited service hotels in Hawaii will find that challenging because the customer will ask, why am I paying this much more when the services have been lessened? There's less of this and less of that. Housekeeping is only coming every 3 days or 7 days or whatever it may be. But that's something that we have to do right now on our own until we start getting some reporting back from of our vendors that we work with.
No, that's a really, really insightful. Appreciate that. Emily, how about you folks on the revenue management side? How are you guys trying to forecast, going forward right now?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, our revenue management team stayed pretty intact through the course of this. We have a regional revenue management team that oversees the entire portfolio, so a good group of people there, and they took over a daily forecast looking at things like pace reports. And luckily we have concentrations of hotels in various markets, so we're able to get different market reports that might not be more widely available, just because we can have all of our hotels kind of buy into some of that. So it's been a lot of keeping our ear to the ground with the relationships we have within other leaders within the local jurisdictions or within the brands to get as much of that kind of scrappy through the grapevine information that's available out there and put that together. The other key for that for us has been clear communication within our organization. So implementing things like marketing RevMax calls. We always have a revenue maximization call every single week with our properties individually, but on a monthly basis, our marketing team counterparts will join those calls to make sure that they're having revenue-driven marketing discussions, because we want to make sure that we're making data-driven decisions as much as possible. We've also leveraged some technologies for that. So the brands are great, but there's, with e-commerce consulting group on the Hilton side going away and Marriott Field Marketing disappearing and a lot of furloughs on the brand side, a lot of that information sort of dried up. So we utilize Power BI, and we have a proprietary first analytics tool that we've been starting to put information into instead, so that we can take our national forecast information, our statewide and local forecast information, and stack it up against the information we're getting from our hotels in those markets to make sure that we're tracking appropriately. We've been in a lot of ways more conservative than some of those, again, just thinking long-term and wanting to overperform. This is one of those weird times where we'd rather overperform on the forecast than either meet it or underperform on the forecast. So it's been a lot of like getting as much data as we can, putting it into a system so we can disseminate it and really look at it critically, and then making sure we're clearly communicating that across the organization. So every GM, every DOS, every revenue manager, every marketing manager knows exactly where we're supposed to be headed, to make sure we're hitting that rate. And it's still been a challenge.
I can only imagine. I mean, we're doing some projects like in Mexico, in Cabo, and getting actual like good, hard, authentic data has been really challenging. So we're almost out of time. We've got a little bit under 10 minutes left. We're coming into the holiday season. We're coming into the deep of winter for a lot of markets in the US. Craig, what strategies would you recommend from a marketing perspective that hotels can take to help boost their holiday occupancies and the typical low winter season occupancies? What do you recommend?
If they haven't yet, let's revisit digital media. I know that was one of the channels that had scrutiny early on in the pandemic. I think with most hotels, they've realized the return potential from specific digital media. Obviously, that bleeds into non-branded search, which can be more costly, but again, more effective from new acquisition. I would encourage hotels to consider those opportunities, again, while still being efficient with budget, but with a much more targeted approach for the holidays. What I'll also say is sort of continuing to develop what we've learned throughout the pandemic is the guests this holiday season will be slightly different from last holiday season. So really understand what resonates with them and create very creative, packaging and messaging that would attract that specific audience. But I think in any case, right, I'm talking about content, I'm talking about advertising. Everything needs to be consistent. It needs to be omni-channel. So just make sure that whatever you're promoting, it's consistent on your website or vanity website, on your brand site, as well as all of your marketing.
Is there, just out of curiosity, is there a particular website or platform that you think hotels can get the most value out of, the best bang for their buck, if they're going to do any advertising or put any energy into it? What's the best right now?
Sure. So I think it still leads from impact perspective. Google is quickly becoming the dominant player in travel. We saw that even leading up to the pandemic and certainly during. I would encourage hotels to consider their search platform and how they can leverage paid search advertising and the opportunities there. Some of the other third parties I might rely and work very closely with our partners to identify if that's the right strategy. But certainly from a blanketed and more broad perspective, certainly all the tools that Google has to offer.
Got it. So let's bring this home now. I'm going to ask each of you to tell us what are for the listeners, and we're putting this out on YouTube and such, what are the top 3 recommendations, regardless of what kind of hotel it is or stuff? What are the top 3 recommendations you would give to people watching this to help their hotel, regardless of size and chain scale? What are the top 3 recommendations? Emily, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah, so top 3 recommendations first would be looking critically inside at your organization. Marketing, it does not exist in a vacuum. We can't work effectively without the support of sales and revenue, and especially our operations counterparts. So I look critically within your property to make sure that you are being true and honest, and not, instead of being like, they didn't do that thing, or, we're selling the dream and they're servicing this nightmare or whatever, that we're really looking at making sure that we're partnering within our hotel. And that includes everything from being clear about what your goals are, to being clear about your messaging for the property, about being clear about the types of guests that are and are not okay to have at your property, and kind of what pools you want to play in. So that would be my number 1 recommendation. The second is to go off of what Craig mentioned earlier, which is be creative. And when I say be creative, I mean look critically at your targeting. The smaller your bubble, the more money it costs to target those people. So make sure you're really clear about what that is. Be creative and outside the box. Like, just because we're a hotel doesn't mean that we have to only do hotels. Like, the whole mantra of heads and beds doesn't really matter. Is, as we come out of this, I've had hotels, play ideas of like doing escape rooms at their hotels, or repurposing their guest rooms to be office spaces or homeschooling spaces. Think outside of your 4 walls as well. Can you do things? We had a hotel that usually does a magic show and couldn't. So they did a rooftop picnic, a magical rooftop picnic. And they got heating lamps and had this whole thing. And they had their magician on the rooftop of the parking garage next to them. And they used that to drive revenue in what would have been a cold day and otherwise an inaccessible outdoor event. So be creative. And finally, think sustainably. So not just sustainably from a financial perspective, meaning we're managing costs and driving revenue, but also sustainably from an environmental perspective and sustainably from a cultural perspective. If 2020 has taught us nothing else, it's that anything we thought that could be thrown at us will get thrown at us. Murder hornets, fire, hurricanes, blizzards, everything, right? So think sustainably for your business as a whole. When this crisis is over, there will be another one. What is it going to be? We don't know. So are you making sure that you are a steward of your local environment so that your beaches are still there for guests to come and enjoy? Are you making sure that you are being engaged in your community in such a way that your customers, your guests, your associates are have a sense of belonging while they're there? Are we being good stewards of our communities? So those would be my 3 takeaways: is look critically internally, be creative, and think sustainably, financially, environmentally, and culturally.
And you have your last point is subliminal behind you over your shoulder.
Oh yeah, obviously. Please get out and vote. It's Tuesday, November 3rd in 2020. It's one of those times where it's okay to go out in public. I encourage you to go out in public. If you haven't done your mail-in ballot yet, I will be working a poll. So if you are a voter in Indian River County, there's a good chance that you'll see me at my local polling place with my mask on, helping you fill out your voter registration stuff. So get out and vote. Be a good steward of your community.
Thank you, Emily. Brad, how about for you? The top 3 things you'd recommend to any hotel you're listening right now?
Yeah, Emily, great things that you talked about there. The top 3 that I want to convey are, the first is clear messaging. We have to be clear and concise with our messaging, whether it's external messaging to our customers that are looking to purchase a product or buy an experience. It needs to be driven by the authenticity of that actual experience that you're trying to provide, or the product that you're trying to provide. We talk about the protocols and different things that have occurred over the past 7 months with this pandemic, and a clear and concise messaging in regards to what each of our entities is doing to ensure that the safety and security for not only the external guests, but for our associates. So clear messaging has to be something that is really taking to heart. I think before that it could have been more of a broad message, and I do believe nowadays you've got to be clear and concise of exactly what is happening. we get numerous calls of people who are asking for the fine details, and for us to provide the fine details really does help us with that message that we're trying to convey. So that'd be the first. The second is kind of a little bit towards what Emily said on the creative, but I would say that what you thought would happen before is not possible. You need to think of again. So pivoting on anything that you're doing nowadays, you need to be able to pivot and flex in every way possible. As I talked about earlier, we didn't think about different market segments to kind of explore before because they really kind of did not drive demand. Well, now we need to pivot and kind of look at those new possibilities. We need to challenge our associates to think that way. We need to challenge every associate in our organization to think that way, that if there's a more efficient way to do things, that we should be looking at. So I think the thoughts of what we did previously need to be kind of thrown away. And we now need to think things with a new lens, to take a look at the world in a new lens. So pivoting is going to be key to our success in the future. And I've touched on it, but we need to be so authentic. And we've talked about authenticity before. And I know that it needs to be so much on the forefront. When we are talking an authentic and experience here in Hawaii, we need it to be authentic. We need to be true to our word. We need to be true to everything that we do from a Hawaiian experience perspective. And I know that would be same to be said whether you're in New York City, Nashville, Tennessee, or going to Disneyland in Anaheim. So I think we just need to ensure that each of our associates has that touch of authenticity, because they're going to be the people that are interacting with our customers more than maybe Emily and myself, who are maybe behind the scenes a bit more, not front of the line. And so that to ensure that we continue to grow tourism, authenticity is going to be such a key and vital aspect of what we do on our day-to-day lives. But yeah, just great stuff today, Chris. I really appreciate all of what you've done.
Thank you, Bradley, for chiming in, and really appreciate your involvement. Craig, why don't you take it home for us? Top 3 things that you'd recommend to any hotelier listening right now.
I'm going to borrow a couple that have already been said, but kind of put a little bit of spin on it along the lines of what I've already mentioned. So doubling down on user experience, both offline and online. There's never been a situation in our industry where those were more close than they are today, right? The user experience that a guest has at your hotel is just as impactful as the one that they have online. So while I agree with both of you, make sure that the messaging is current and it's relevant. You just want to make sure that to be mindful of how guests are accessing that information and using it. The second thing is along the same lines, is whatever you establish as your message, as your experience online, start considering how that is then playing into their path towards conversion. Are you truly set up to receive additional traffic through your digital channels? Are you capitalizing on some of that success and actually moving guests down the funnel towards a conversion? What I'll say lastly is really start to measure the results, right? We've talked about establishing goals, reestablishing goals. You can really gain a lot of insight when you start diving into the data that's relevant to today's guests. And then you could start adapting your marketing strategy based on those trends. Those are 3 things for me.
No, amazing. Thank you. And I want to thank all 3 of you for jumping on here with us and sharing your thoughts and insight. I really appreciate it. And we will be doing our next panel here in a few weeks, and we'll put an announcement out. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And until next time, stay safe and stay healthy. Take care, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye.